The motel owner gave me one warning. If someone knocks after midnight, don't open the door. I thought he was joking. A few hours later, someone knocked. I was 23 years old when this happened. It was the summer of 1998. I was driving across Arizona on my way to California. The trip had already taken 2 days. The desert seemed endless. Miles of empty roads stretched in every direction. No towns, no houses, no people. Just heat, sand, and silence. By late evening, the temperature finally started to drop. The sun sank behind the mountains. The sky turned orange, then purple. I thought I would reach the next town before dark. I was wrong. Without warning, my car began to shake. The engine coughed once, then twice. A second later, it died completely. I pulled onto the side of the road. I tried starting it again. Nothing happened. The engine was dead. I sat there for several minutes, hoping another car would pass. None did. The highway was empty. For the first time that day, I felt nervous. I grabbed a flashlight and started walking. The desert became colder with every step. The only sound was the wind. After nearly 30 minutes, I noticed something far ahead. A faint light. At first, I thought it was a gas station. As I got closer, I realized it wasn't. It was a motel, an old motel. A flickering neon sign stood near the road. Several letters no longer worked, but I could still read the name. Last Stop Motel. The building looked abandoned. Paint peeled from the walls. Several windows were boarded shut. The parking lot was nearly empty. Only 3 vehicles remained: a pickup truck, an old sedan, and a rusted van. Something about the place felt wrong, but I didn't have many choices. The lobby was quiet. A small television played in the corner. Behind the desk sat an elderly man. He looked at me without smiling. His eyes seemed tired, almost worried. I asked if there were any rooms available. He nodded slowly, then handed me a registration form. As I filled it out, I noticed something strange. The guest book contained very few names. Almost nobody stayed there. The old man handed me a key. Room 12. Before letting go of the key, he paused. Then he looked directly into my eyes. If someone knocks after midnight, don't open the door. For a moment I laughed. I thought it was some kind of joke. But the old man wasn't smiling. He looked completely serious. I asked why. His answer was short. Because it won't be a guest. I carried my bag to room 12. The motel seemed strangely quiet. Not a single door opened. Not a single voice could be heard. The only sound was the desert wind. Inside, the room was small but clean. There was an old television, a wooden dresser, and a bed facing the window. For a while, everything felt normal. I turned on the television, watched a few channels, then lay down to rest. Outside, the wind continued to howl. Sometime after midnight, I woke up suddenly. At first, I didn't know why. Then I heard it. Footsteps. Slow footsteps. Moving across the parking lot. Crunch, crunch, crunch. The sound grew closer. I sat up in bed, listening. The footsteps stopped directly outside my door. For several seconds, there was complete silence. Then came 3 knocks. Knock, knock, knock. My heart immediately started racing. The owner's warning returned to my mind. I remained completely still, trying not to make a sound. Several seconds passed. Then the knocking came again. Knock, knock, knock. This time it sounded louder, almost impatient. I slowly got out of bed and walked toward the window. Carefully, I pulled back the curtain. My stomach dropped. The parking lot was empty. Nobody stood outside my room. Nobody stood near the building. Yet somehow, the knocking continued. Then I noticed something. Far across the parking lot, under a broken streetlight, a tall figure, standing perfectly still, watching my room. I couldn't see its face. I couldn't tell if it was a man or a woman. It didn't move. It simply stood there, Watching, I blinked, looked away for a second. When I looked back, the figure was gone. A few minutes later, the knocking returned. This time it sounded even closer, almost angry. Then I heard a voice, a whisper, right outside the door. "Open up." Every hair on my body stood up. The voice sounded wrong, as if several voices were speaking at the same time. "Open up." The whisper came again. I backed away from the door and refused to answer. The rest of the night felt endless. The knocking continued. Sometimes it stopped for 10 minutes. Sometimes it returned immediately. But I never opened the door. Eventually, sunlight began to appear. The desert sky slowly brightened. The knocking stopped. For the first time in hours, everything was silent. I grabbed my belongings and rushed to the front office. The old owner was already waiting, as if he knew I was coming. Before I could say anything, he spoke first. "You heard it, didn't you?" I nodded. The old man looked toward room 12. Then he sighed. "Every few years, someone hears the knocking." I asked who had been outside my room. The old man's answer still haunts me. "There was nobody outside your room." I stared at him, unable to speak. Then he added one final sentence. "That's why I told you not to open the door." I never returned to that motel. Years later, the building was demolished and forgotten. Today, nothing remains, except an empty stretch of desert. But truck drivers still tell stories about a flickering motel sign appearing in the darkness. A motel that shouldn't exist anymore. And according to those stories, someone is still knocking on room 12. If you ever find yourself alone on a desert highway late at night and you see a lonely motel glowing in the distance, keep driving. Some doors are never meant to be opened. I was home alone on the first night of winter break. I ordered food, turned on Netflix, and expected a quiet evening. Less than 20 minutes later, someone started pounding on my front door. The problem was, the delivery driver wasn't supposed to arrive for another 20 minutes. I was 16 years old when this happened. It was the beginning of winter break, and my parents had gone out with my younger brother for the evening. Since I had been feeling sick all day, I decided to stay home. Honestly, I was excited. A quiet apartment. No school tomorrow. No responsibilities. I ordered food, grabbed a blanket, and started watching a crime documentary on Netflix. For the first hour, everything felt completely normal. About 15 minutes after placing my order, a loud bang echoed through the apartment. At first, I thought something had fallen outside. Then it happened again. Bang, bang, bang. Someone was hitting my front door. A man's voice shouted from the hallway. "Delivery! Open up!" I immediately checked my phone. The delivery app still showed the driver 20 minutes away. That's when I felt my stomach drop. Trying not to make any noise, I walked toward the door. I looked through the peephole. A tall man stood outside. He was wearing a dark hoodie and dirty jeans. There was no delivery bag, no food, no company uniform. He just stood there staring at the door. Then he looked directly at the peephole, as if he knew I was watching him. I quickly stepped back. The knocking became even more aggressive. The entire door shook. "Open the door!" the man yelled. My heart was racing. I backed away and locked my bedroom door. Then I pushed a dresser in front of it. I grabbed my phone and dialed 911. My hands were shaking so badly that I almost dropped it. The dispatcher told me to stay hidden and remain quiet. Police units were on their way. I turned off every light in my room and crawled into my closet. Outside, the pounding continued. Then suddenly, silence. Complete silence. For a few seconds, I thought he had left. Then I heard a loud crash. The front door had been forced open. Heavy footsteps entered the apartment. Slow, deliberate, searching. I could hear drawers opening, furniture moving. The man was walking from room to room, looking for someone. looking for me. I covered my mouth with both hands, terrified that even a single breath would give away my hiding place. The footsteps stopped outside my bedroom. The doorknob began to move. Once, twice, then harder. The man was trying to get inside. I closed my eyes and prepared for the worst. Suddenly, another voice echoed through the apartment. "Police! Get on the ground!" Everything happened at once. Shouting, running footsteps, commands, then silence. A few moments later, an officer knocked gently on my bedroom door. "It's over," he said. "You're safe." When I finally stepped out, the apartment was a disaster. The front door had been damaged. Furniture had been overturned. Police officers were escorting the man outside in handcuffs. Later, detectives told my parents that the suspect had a long criminal history and had been arrested multiple times before. No one ever figured out why he chose our apartment. Maybe it was random. Maybe it wasn't. But one thing still bothers me. If I had opened that door when he first knocked, I probably wouldn't be telling this story today. Even now, years later, I still look through the peephole before opening my door. Because sometimes, the person on the other side isn't who they claim to be. At 3 a.m., we heard someone moving inside our Airbnb. We thought it was a burglar. But when police searched the house, they found a man hiding behind the refrigerator with a knife. This is a true story. This happened when I was 20 years old. 3 friends and I rented a cheap Airbnb in a remote mountain area during summer vacation. The house was old. It was surrounded by forests and hills. There were no nearby neighbors. The nearest road was almost a mile away. Phone service barely worked. Honestly, the place looked like something from a horror movie. But we loved it. During the day, we went hiking. At night, we sat around a campfire and talked for hours. For 3 days, everything was perfect. Then the 4th night arrived. After spending the evening around the campfire, we finally went to bed around 2 a.m. I was sleeping alone on the first floor. My friends were sleeping upstairs. About 30 minutes later, I suddenly woke up. At first, I wasn't sure why. Then I noticed a shadow outside my bedroom window. Someone was standing there. A loud knock hit the glass. Half asleep, I thought it was one of my friends. But when I looked closer, my heart dropped. The person outside wasn't my friend. It was a complete stranger. He stared directly at me. Then he knocked again. Panic hit me immediately. I grabbed my phone and ran upstairs. I woke up my friend Marcus. Together, we rushed downstairs. That's when we heard footsteps outside the front door. Then we realized something terrifying. The front door wasn't locked. We quickly turned on the outdoor lights. The moment the lights came on, the stranger started running. We watched him sprint toward a car parked down the road. Seconds later, he disappeared into the darkness. None of us slept that night. The next morning, we told the property owner what happened. We also contacted the police. Nobody seemed too concerned. The owner said nothing like this had ever happened before. We tried to convince ourselves that the man was probably drunk or lost. But deep down, we knew something felt wrong. The next day, 2 of our friends had to leave because of a family emergency. That left only Eva and me in the house. We were nervous, but we believed the stranger wouldn't come back. We were wrong. Around 3 a.m., Eva suddenly woke me up. She looked terrified. She whispered that she had heard the barn door open. The owner had warned us that the barn couldn't be locked. Worse, it connected directly to the kitchen. Then we heard a loud crash downstairs. A table we had placed as a barrier had fallen over. Someone was inside the house. We froze. Footsteps slowly moved across the first floor. Eva pushed a wardrobe against the bedroom door. I grabbed my phone and searched desperately for a signal. Finally, one bar appeared. Just enough to call the police. The police said it would take 30 minutes to reach us. Those 30 minutes felt like forever. Eventually, the footsteps stopped. But when we looked outside, the stranger's car was still there. He hadn't left. He was still inside the house. Eva was crying. Neither of us knew what would happen next. Finally, police arrived. Officers searched the property room by room. Then they found him. The man was hiding behind the refrigerator in the kitchen. He was holding a knife. Investigators later discovered that he knew the property owner. He knew the house was being rented, and he had a history of attempted sexual assault. If the police had arrived any later, things could have ended very differently. To this day, I have never rented an Airbnb again. The scariest part wasn't the knife. It wasn't the break-in. It was knowing that he had been watching us the entire time. When I was 12 years old, my mom and I almost stopped to help a stranded driver on a deserted California road. Seconds later, we realized we had narrowly escaped something far more dangerous. Some memories never leave you. No matter how much time passes, certain moments stay with you forever. This is one of those moments. Back in the summer of 2003, I was 12 years old. One evening, my mom came home from work and surprised me. "Pack a bag," she said. "We're leaving tonight." She had decided to visit a friend who lived near Anaheim, California. The trip wasn't planned. It was completely spontaneous. A few hours later, we were already on the road. At first, everything felt normal. We listened to music. We talked about our plans. We laughed and enjoyed the drive. It felt like the beginning of a fun little adventure. But before the night was over, something happened that I would never forget. To avoid traffic and toll roads, my mom followed an alternate route shown on a printed map. Soon, the busy freeway disappeared behind us. The farther we drove, the quieter everything became. The city lights slowly faded away. The houses disappeared. The gas stations vanished. Before long, there was nothing around us except empty fields and darkness. It was close to midnight. The only light came from our headlights cutting through the road ahead. The entire area felt isolated, almost forgotten. Then, something appeared in the distance. A white sedan parked on the side of the road. As we got closer, the car looked abandoned. Its headlights were off. The engine seemed silent. But there was a faint light glowing inside. My mom slowed down. "Maybe someone needs help," she said. At the time, it sounded reasonable. Back then, cell phones weren't nearly as common as they are today. If someone broke down on a deserted road, they could be stranded for hours. As we approached the vehicle, I noticed someone sitting inside. For a few seconds, nothing happened. Then the driver's door slowly opened. A man stepped out. He looked completely ordinary. Short hair, athletic build, a sports jersey, dark sweatpants. Nothing about him immediately seemed threatening. He simply stood beside the car and motioned for us to come closer. But something felt wrong. Even at 12 years old, I could feel it. I couldn't explain why. Maybe it was the silence. Maybe it was the empty road. Or maybe it was the feeling that we were completely alone out there. Whatever it was, an uneasy feeling settled deep in my stomach. My mom slowly rolled the car forward. The headlights illuminated the man more clearly. Then everything changed. Without warning, he slipped one hand into the pocket of his sweatpants. For a brief moment, nobody moved. Then something metallic flashed in the light. A knife. A large kitchen knife. The blade reflected directly into our windshield. Time seemed to stop. The man didn't say a word. He didn't ask for help. He didn't explain anything. He simply stood there holding the knife. In that instant, both my mom and I realized the same thing. This wasn't someone looking for help. Something was terribly wrong. My mom reacted immediately. She slammed her foot onto the accelerator. The tires screeched against the pavement. The car surged forward. I was pushed back into my seat. My heart felt like it was about to burst out of my chest. As we sped away, I kept looking through the rear window. I expected to see headlights chasing us. I expected that white sedan to come racing after us. But there was nothing. Only darkness. For several minutes, neither of us spoke. My mom gripped the steering wheel tightly and focused only on getting away. Eventually, streetlights began to appear again. Buildings came back into view. For the first time that night, we finally felt safe. Later, after arriving at my mom's friend's house, local law enforcement was contacted. The next day, officers searched the area we had described. They found tire tracks near the dirt road. But the white sedan was gone. The man was gone. No stranded driver had been reported. No breakdowns had been reported. There was no explanation. It was as if the entire encounter had vanished into the night. More than 20 years have passed since then. And even now, I still think about that man standing beside the white sedan. Who was he? Why was he waiting there? And what would have happened if we had stopped? The truth is, I'll probably never know. And sometimes, the unanswered questions are far more terrifying than the answers. Even after all these years, I still think about that night. I still remember that empty road. I still remember that white sedan. And I still remember the man standing in the darkness. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if we had stopped. But maybe, some questions are better left unanswered.